Yeah, hi, my name's Tim Hornsby. For my sins in a previous life, I invented York Fibbers in 1992. For about the last 24 years, I've been booking there, apart from a couple of years break when I went next door to invent somewhere else. I've gone blank. I'm also a mentor for the Princess Trust, a business mentor for the Princess Trust, and I give talks to kids at school as well. About getting into live music. I have sort of two things I'm concerned about today. One thing is I'm concerned about loyalty within the business. I see a lot of us here start off bands at 50 quid and 100 quid and we get them going, and then when it comes to the big ticket selling time, we get passed over and all the tours go to SJM, etc. My other issue is I've gone blank again. My other issue is when it comes to getting shows on sale, I want to get stuff on sale as soon as possible. Yet there's a lot of rigmarole in between these days. I want to go back to the old days when we set promoters free, when promoters were free to decide ticket prices, when you went on sale, your supports, you didn't have to go through approval of supports. And these are a lot of things I'd like to see promoters set free again. And that's basically me. Thank you for inviting me here.
So it's a lot of very good points there to start off with. I mean, so the idea you want to be sort of like, you know, working in a very independent kind of way. They said they were quite prepared to involve the sort of regional venues, but it costs a lot. You know, if a gig loses a lot of money, you would lose a lot of money. I mean, when it gets that big, somebody in your position, could you cope with those costs and things?
Well, I've done shows up to 2,000 capacity. I think my point is, and I think the best example I can give recently is Blossoms that happened to me. Now, in the last year, I've given 2 great shows to Blossoms, fed them, baked them a cake, did some great shows with them, lost money, and then when it comes to when they're worth some real ticket sales, it's all gone. Phone the agent, ring, Blossoms are doing some business now, can I have a show? Anything up to 500, 1,000, sorry, it's all gone to SJM. I don't have an issue with SJM, they're in business, and that's what they do, but I just think we could do with a little bit more loyalty, that's all.
Yeah, a little bit, sort of bit of a kickback, or just a bit of a share of a gig, or...
No, not kickbacks, no, just loyalty.
Yeah.
We could come back to the smaller venues, and we could be included in some of those venues which go to 500 and 1,000 kebab, rather than it all going to the big promoters.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that in a minute, so...
Hi there, I'm Robb Toogood. I founded Fuel Rock Club 10 years ago. We started as a club night, and then we moved into being a full-time venue, which I'm not sure is very common. But when you become a club night, loads of us done it, it's great. You just book a venue, take the money and disappear into the night while the venue has the trouble on keeping open. 3 years ago, we bought a venue in the middle of Cardiff. And then you encounter all those other amazing things like VAT and rates and all these sort of PRS and PPL. One of the issues we have with booking tours, I mean, we book fairly few. I think in this year we've done like 150, 200 shows by the end of the year. It is getting to the agent sometimes and getting them to take you seriously and getting hold of them and getting them to answer your calls, etc. Because there seems to be a little bit of clique, etc., and they'll have their favourite venues, and it'd be nice to be able to break in and get hold of certain agents. That's one problem we have.
So your basic beef with agents is you get ignored by some agents, okay?
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the owner of Sanctuary Rock Bar in Burnley. I'm also the main booker and promoter there. I've seen a lot of changes over 11 years that we've been established, mainly declining local bands. It's made us readdress what kind of bands we need to book to get the customers through the door, increase customer base and things. And again, I'm going to touch on problems that have already been mentioned, dealing with agents that won't entertain smaller venues anymore, unreasonable fees, not negotiating on fees or rider deals. So basically everything that has already been mentioned before.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bex Majors. I'm a booking agent at CAA. Probably going to be the object of a lot of the hate in the room. I'm okay with that. Bring it on. I've been an agent at CAA for 10 years. Before that was at Helter Skelter Agency. And going back further than that, I was actually a promoter. I ran Cardiff Barfly. I worked with Tim Hornsby when we were all part of the Barfly little group of venues at the time. Prior to that, I was an independent promoter, so I have, the privilege of working on both sides of the fence. I think I probably know quite a lot of you people in this room, and I do take pride in the fact that I do work with a lot of independent promoters, a lot of independent venues. I think it's incredibly important that you do support the grassroots music venues. I work predominantly in the rock space, not exclusively so, but my passion is very much developing bands, and I see it as a real point of honour that my job is not just to protect my artists, but also to protect the promoters, because without you guys, without the venues, without the people developing at that level, we have no business. So I do like to think I'm fairly fair. I'm sure it will come up at some point that you pick holes in me, but we'll go from there. Let's see
Yeah,
what
I mean,
happens.
this is not just one-way traffic. It's not pick on the agents, you know. So it's, I mean, as an agent, I mean, is there things that you find working with some venues that are difficult as well, or you prefer a change or making your life easier?
Well, I do take slight umbrage to the fact that agents are hard to get hold of, because I'm not. I'm really not. But there's a lot of people in this room I probably haven't heard from, and I'm not difficult to find. I make a point of having all of my bands list my contact details. I don't hide from the internet at all. I also don't really take kindly to people telling me that they can't get a return phone call or that I don't negotiate. Anybody that works with me, I think, will say, and I've worked with Tim for 15 years or something, I think Tim will tell you that, you know, I do negotiate. And ultimately, I think there's a lot to be done that is about educating venues, new promoters, about how it works and about how bands tour and about how costly that is for the bands. Because whilst the venues and the grassroots promoters are, yes, investing and developing in that talent, ultimately the people that are paying for that development are the artists themselves. They're not making any money, the venues aren't making money, agents aren't making money, the labels sure as shit aren't making any money. So I think that is something that I think a lot of people neglect to take into consideration, is the fact that the bands are the ones that are ultimately paying for it in the first stages of their career.
So what you're saying in a way that it'd be better, if you like a newer promoters or newer venues, there was some kind of understanding of how the process works, what an agent actually does, what a band needs, those kind of requirements.
And I'm more than happy to have those conversations on a one-on-one basis any time. There's quite a lot of younger promoters, I don't know if any of them are in the room, but that have called me up to just ask me how it works and talk them through a deal and talk them through the costs involved in touring. More than happy to work with that. Everybody has to start somewhere, and I think it's really important that we help those people get a leg up, because in 10 years, 20 years time, there'll be Steve Tilley or Stuart Galbraith or Andy Copping, and they're the people that make the business work.
Yeah, so more, again, like we said last panel, more communication. Yeah, so.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Belezos, and I work as a booking agent at ITB. I've been an agent for just over 10 years, and yeah, I'd love to open the discussion today. It's really great to be able to see a lot of people and meet some first times. I think it's so important, I mean, just going along with what Bex has said, is it's very easy to just jump into the scenario of the relationship of going straight to a national promoter who, quite frankly, it doesn't help either side. You know, I think you need to allow the artist to be able to be seen and develop in each of those local areas by the people that are physically there, the people that know the audiences, know the venues, know what's right and wrong. And you know, it is taking quite a hit at the beginning with everyone, but an artist does have to go out and kind of hit the ground with very little, if any, budget at all. I think for me, what's really important to me is not just to work with venues on a grassroots level and then move up and then forget. You know, I'll always try to approach situations, whether it's special shows or, of course, when there's a local area kind of thing. But it'd be great to hear more about that.
Okay, Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Zapp from ITB Booking Agency. I've been there 15 years, a couple of agencies before, and before that ran my own agency. I started, I suppose, in music, apart from doing a hospital radio show, whilst at school, at running entertainments at Reading Uni as a student whilst I was there. Also Kingston, so have promoted from that side, albeit obviously not with my own money. Also set up the Fly magazine with B. Rozzo a number of years ago, so certainly the young touring circuit was very close to A, my attention, and B, my heart. I think quite a lot of, as we'll probably get into later, quite a lot of things I'd say are on a case-by-case basis. Certain times there are acts where the manager has a relationship with a certain promoter, or actually the manager are a promoter in some cases, so it makes it really hard to be able to give to local promoters. I try and work as long as possible with local promoters, and in some cases there was one case where in Birmingham I had a show that went up to arena level that the local promoter was still involved in. And again, I wouldn't be doing this myself now without having known local promoters. There's a couple of people in this room who, right back in the day when I started, Tim on the end of the panel, Paul Jackson, I think, was probably in here, and I don't know if Pod's here, but they were all very integral to how I learned how regional shows work. So, it is very important to me.
So when you get a new band and you put them out on the grassroots tour, I mean, what kind of criteria do you use? I mean, obviously you know a lot of people in the business, and a lot of promoters, and a lot of venues, but you can't know all of them. So if you get new people coming through, is there a criteria you look at? I mean, is it obviously just picking the towns you think the band should be playing in, or is there certain promoters you like working with?
New artists or new promoters?
Well, both really. Well, actually, if you've got a new artist, you're trying to decide where to put that tour.
I mean, I think probably the best, most recent example is the band I'm working with called October Drift, where we've just done there's a lot of interest from national promoters, some very good national promoters who I would have no problems with being involved at the right time. But, when you're playing to 40 to 100 people a night, it's probably not in anybody's interest to, the band will get paid less money, the local promoter will know the area on average better than the national promoter probably. And in that case, I had a bunch of people I thought would like the band. I sent the music to. We did some shows with the band, had some pre-existing relationships, which I kept going. And there was also a bunch of people I hadn't never worked with who the band and manager were willing to trust in certain areas where I might not usually do loads of shows. And ironically, those shows probably did better than the usual places. So I think just had an open mind on that one.
So it's not really set in stone, is it? It's not like there's a tried and tested 20 venue circuit. You're open to all different ways to get these gigs set up.
Yeah, as I said, it varies from band to band. There were sometimes you get a band who have only got, like, say, 8 dates or 10 dates they can do, and in reality, for media purposes, they want to do the real major market cities. There's others where it's down to the bottom line, and sadly, some shows I want to do with certain promoters they can't afford to do. When I first started doing this, and I'm sure you guys, a band would probably get 15, 25,000 pounds tour support to do a 25, 30 date tour. So you'd be able to cut a deal with a promoter and do a show that you knew the band was losing on that show, and you could help the promoter a bit more than normal. But now, if the band are getting zero and relying on the merch, the gig fee and the merch money, which we'll get onto the fees later, I'm assuming, it makes it tougher, but it does vary.
Yes, so if you get a new promoter or a new venue that comes to you, do you vet them at all, or how would you know? Is it a gamble? You just...
Well, firstly, it depends how if they come to me through another promoter or a band who's had a good experience, that's a plus point, obviously. If I don't know them, where possible, and it fits the remit of what we could possibly do, then I'll obviously ask the promoter which other bands they've worked with recently, which other agents they might work with, and hopefully get to check out those and check how it went. Sometimes you get told that agent did this and it was brilliant, and you talk to them and it wasn't good at all. Sometimes you get complete positive, and a lot of promoters I work with now, I found out through that way, and they've been brilliant.
And when the bands get bigger, do you have to change the people putting the shows on in towns? Just because it's a financial thing or capability?
It varies again. There's one of the key things I think is increasingly tough for on the agent side is that certain festivals being owned by certain promoters or controlled by certain promoters, and there are times where you'll get told we'll give you a slot if we're the promoter, and that makes it really, really hard. But then again, there are other times where, you know, national promoter Steve's, for example, one of my artists who's on tour with an artist he's promoting, actually playing London tonight, and we wouldn't have got Father Son with Augustine's, and we wouldn't have got that tour without his input as a national promoter. So from me, there's a degree of loyalty back to him, because he's given them not only a break in one town, across the whole of Europe. So
this kind of little deals or favours to favours?
Not necessarily a deal, but
not all the time, but occasionally. Yeah.
As I said, it's a case for me. It varies from band to band.
You about to say something?
As far as trying out new promoters as well, I mean, there are parts of the country that, you know, I've not been able to do, little pockets that I've wanted to. In one case in Kent, Ramsgate to be particular, and you know, I have family that live around there, so I know the area well. And I thought, well, it's either Margate, Winter Gardens at one size, or what can I do smaller? And I ended up finding a lovely place called Ramsgate Music Hall, and have been able to, you know, put on some great shows there I'm really happy about, and have a great experience with the promoter. So you don't always get that, to be fair, but it is about giving it a go. And I think trial and error, isn't it?
So when you're an agent working with booking the tour as well, it's the same kind of thing. You tend to use the people you always use, and then add on different people as you go along.
I think it's like a rolling cast that develops, isn't it? Going back to the loyalty thing, if somebody's done some good shows for me and done a great job and made my artist feel comfortable, I'm inclined to work with them again, of course. And you know, likewise, if there's somebody that's brand new, I will happily work with them. I won't cannibalise a relationship I've already got in order to work with somebody new, but there's always room for more people at the table, I think. And also on the loyalty side, you know, I do think that national promoters get a bit of a hard time at times, and I think that they have a very valuable job, as equally valuable as the grassroots venue. That's another discussion point potentially. But I do think that there is room for both within the industry. And I do think it's really important that there is a certain amount of working together, whether it's co-promotion or a certain amount of respect for, I am a grass music venue or a DIY promoter, I can realistically take a band to a certain level, and I shouldn't have expectations beyond that level unless I'm prepared to stump up 50% of the risk and prove myself that I actually have the structure in which to do that. And so the promoters that work developing my artists that then potentially lose them to a national promoter are the people that I will then go back to next time around that I have a developing band that I'm confident are going to sell tickets and develop. So they might not necessarily make money with the same band that they've worked with a few times, but there'll be another opportunity further down the line as somebody that I know is reliable and has done me essentially a favour by taking a punt on a band in the early days.
I mean, this is all very well, so but
We get a lot of, to be fair, we do get a lot of band offers from agents and things. I think you've been in touch. But we can't risk putting bands on that none of our customers are familiar with without local support. Now, the problem we've got is, because there's been a decline in local bands, we run the risk of putting these bands on that are coming forward. Without local support, we don't get people in. So we're trying to tap into the more mid-range market, mid-range bands, and excuse me, that's when we're getting knockbacks all the time from agents. It's like they don't want to entertain smaller venues. I mean, we could put a very fair offer on the table, fee, rider, ticket deal, whatever, and we either get no response or your venue's too small, and it's really frustrating, to be honest. There's so many bands out there that I've been told, and I've spoken to bands themselves that love playing in smaller venues, and it's out of their hands. It's down to the agents, and they just.
Steve, is this, you know, Burnley, is it a place you would put a band in? You know, you put it all together, obviously you've got to play the big cities, it's really important, but these kind of smaller towns, or is it just, you just don't have the time to squeeze it in?
If it fits the tour, definitely. I mean, I would contest that sometimes it's the artist or the management or the time that's the issue, not necessarily the agent, but or it might be a combination of. But again, there are times where there's a certain a certain length of time of a tour or perception of tour of what people perceive is an A-list tour and then a secondary tour. You know, as I said, with October Drift, we've just done Huddersfield, we've done Torquay, we've done, places that aren't necessarily on every tour. And truthfully, those shows have probably gone better than the major cities. So certainly, if it's the right tour, I would certainly do it.
I mean, what would you want from an agent? You know, as somebody who's in a sort of fairly isolated venue in a small town, just to be listened to. I mean, obviously, you can't expect to get every show, can you? Because it's difficult, isn't it?
I mean,
and you don't expect to get every show. But do you expect more communication? Do they listen to you at all?
Some don't listen at all. Some just ignore us. Some will listen to a point and then cut conversation for some reason. I mean, we've been approached by an agent for a very good mid-range band. I was quite excited about it. It got to the point where I sent a venue brochure in, put I'd researched it a lot and put a fair deal on the table, and it was just sort of get in touch with this guy, he's dealing with it now, and being passed from pillar to post, and then suddenly communication stopped, and even a date was offered. We'd pinned down a date, but it just the deal was never done. That's just one example, but there's been quite a few now where we just get pushed back. It's like, we're a 300 capacity venue. Our band room though is only 115. It feels like they don't think that we're good enough. Yeah, I mean, more intimate gigs in my experience are the ones with the better atmosphere, the better crowd interaction. Bands love, we've never had any bad feedback from any bands that have played, but it's just getting that across to the agents and getting them to trust us, really.
So agents, what advice would you give to somebody in that situation? I mean, there's probably a lot of people in this room probably working in small towns, small venues.
Sometimes it's timing and it doesn't fit the tour, the band's not on tour, it doesn't fit a particular tour, and it may be that the third time you ask, not that you should necessarily have to ask that many times, it may fit the tours. It may just be a case of the tour you're on, this show is too close to another town that you can't do the two together, but the next tour it might be possible. And also, again, just keep making agents and artists know how good other bands' experiences are at your venue.
Yeah. I mean, I do agree. I think, look, we'd be lying if we said we weren't all guilty of sometimes not replying to something. I do personally try, at the very least, to wrap up something, whether it's let's go ahead or not. Mm-hmm. But in the first instance, with the capacity issue, clearly somebody should know from the offset whether 300 cap is the right size for that artist or that particular tour. And then going from there, it is about tour period, and if there is a main city close enough that can't overlap or be too quick. But just really, it's just communication. And I'm sorry you've had to go through those situations. I think it is about kind of giving something a go, and the only way you can do it is by actually doing it. Maybe when if you haven't already, emailing an agent and just kind of bullet pointing some of the artists that have played there recently, or even
I mean, it's all in our venue brochure. We've got plenty of feedback in there from bands and the full sort of our text, but everything that we offer. I always offer, like I say, a fair deal. It's just it's like we're banging our heads against the wall sometimes, and
Do you find that the fees can be unrealistic as well? If you're in a poorer town, is it?
Regarding fees, what I do find frustrating is when they come to us and say, make us an offer, instead of coming with a starting point and allowing us to negotiate, they just say, make us an offer. So you're just like, Christ, where do I start with this? So then you have to do your research about where they've played before, ticket sales in previous venues, etc., etc. So you do your homework and you put an offer forward which you believe to be fair, and then it's just...
But the offer thing's often down to an artist will want to see 20, say you got 10, 12 dates, they want to see 20 offers, and if it's down to the bottom line, they'll pick the best offers. So that's why often the question's asked that way around. Sometimes there are artists where they know the specific costs, and they'll say, hey, get us £500 a show and we'll do it, and can be a lot more direct on that.
Which is why it's frustrating that they're not willing to negotiate as well, because obviously from a business point of view, we'll do our homework, but we will always go in with a sort of slightly lower offer than we're willing to go to allow for negotiation.
Yeah, so your issue there is that they're not
this is-
coming back.
Yeah,
Agents
yeah.
not coming back to you
Exactly,
to give you
yeah,
room
just
to
write it
negotiate
off.
again.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's because when you're dealing with a venue, I would think it's not completely black and white, but the straightforward part is you have a particular costing. We would have a particular ticket price in mind. So you should be able to, meaning both agent and promoter, have something sort of set. And if it's still too low to what you can accept because you know what the tour budget would be or deficit potentially would be, that's where you just have to let the promoter know it's just not going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, as an agent, you're not always trying to get the biggest fee, are you? If somebody from Burnley comes in with an offer and it's less than somebody, I don't know, in the southeast, that's not a problem, is it? Or is it a problem?
Well, I mean, it goes both ways too. With sometimes there's a particular venue, a larger venue, or like an arts center or something to that effect, where the venue costings are sky high, but you know that the artist and manager really have their heart set on doing it. So you're actually making them less on a guaranteed fee because you know you're paying more overall with costings, but it makes sense. And I suppose the profit or the payback is in being able to do the show there.
So you take a long-term view, thinking this show might make less money out of it, but it's got long-term value because people talk about the show longer. Or playing someone like Burnley might be good because that might actually be a show that could sell out and it gets a very grassroots audience. I mean, is this the way you would look at it when you're booking out a tour, or do you just basically go, who's going to give us the most money and we'll just go to all those places?
For me, no way personally.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know anybody that would go out of their way to do that. I mean, I don't want to name, but it's like there's a particular venue that a lot of times you'll hear from a promoter saying, well, you can do this venue safely and not have to pay a huge cost for hire and so on, but you don't have the same atmosphere. It's not right for that particular artist's audience and so on. And if you work that way, I don't know how long you'll have that artist.
Yes, it's more thinking about how to make the show and events. Yeah. So you said initially at the beginning when we started talking that in a way you had this problem as well in York, your Blossoms, because they're managed by SJM anyway, aren't they? So it's a in-house band in a sense. But is this a common thing that happens to you?
I think it tends to happen more and more. I think in many ways today we've got the wrong agents on the panel because I've worked with these guys for years and I find them fair and responsive and very even-handed, and they're being very eloquent today. I'm sure I speak for a lot of people here. There's certain agents that I would prefer to have seen on this panel. And I'm kind of finding it difficult to get stuck in because I actually like these people.
Yeah, but we don't have to say it's like all agents are the same here. Let's just tell us the problems you have. What's making you angry about the other agents?
Nobody gets back to you. It's quite simple. Nobody gets back to you. These guys do. A lot of agents do, but there's a certain number of agents, and people in this room know them, and we could have a straw poll now, and we'd all probably shout the same names, who won't respond to you.
Well, God, which ones are they?
No.
What if we all did?
He told me it was Matt Bates earlier.
There must be a reason why they're not here then.
Yeah. Well, yes, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I do think so, and I've had
So
conversations.
it's the main thing, lack of communication. Or they're just not taking you seriously because you're not like, what they perceive as being a key venue or something.
Yeah, just in York, really. I think the things that annoy me are things when they only fire at your little £50 bands, or do me a favour band here, and you take that favour band and then you never hear anything from them again. Just on a general point as well, I think the music industry, the live music industry, is like an upside-down pyramid, and all the weight is on this little point at the bottom, which is all these small live music venues. And the more they get ignored, the more they get passed over, and the more we get pushed to one side, there isn't going to be anywhere for all these bands to start. Bands do not start at 500 and 1,000 capacity. They start at 50, 100, 150, with people like me and a lot of people in this room. And I know these guys here appreciate that. And one of these days, none of these venues are going to be here, and the industry's going to be in real trouble.
If I can use as a quick example, one act I work with, Vintage Trouble, when they first came out from the States, it was like, we just had a tiny run of shows, dip the toe in kind of thing. And then they were very lucky that once they did later with Jules Holland, it just hit, and their manager was literally like, keep them out there, and it became, they named their DVD off at 80 dates in 100 days. I was booking as I went along, from gentlemen's clubs to, but this one here, Tim, you know, we've done Fibbers about 3-4 times at least, and fair, you know, to be fair, they could have done double over, but there was a real kind of special chemistry with the band and the audience in York. So even though management were asking the question they had to ask, which is, why aren't we doing something different or bigger, I kept saying, well, it makes sense. It's a special stop-off.
Thank you.
Hot stop-off, but special.
It's a great venue, Fibbers. So, I mean, so what's the solution to this? You know, it's, on your plate, you know, from where you're at, you want these people to get back to you. If they're not going to deal with you, can you not just not deal with them and go to the bands directly? Can you not get a little cheeky about it?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
I was going to ask the panel, because we've had a few. And what about venues before forming little, essentially cartels, and you know, giving you sort of 6 venues. There are 6 venues. Here's the tour. Bang.
People do that, don't they? You know.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of people I could in theory just speak to Lisa and say, what do you think about this band and how much are we going to offer? You know, I know it's all dark arts of that sort of thing. But
So basically, for example, you would come to the agents here and say, I'm representing the cartel, because somebody's going to have to represent it. It'll get complicated otherwise. Here's 6 dates. We can get across the whole north of England, playing all these venues. You know, maybe Burnley could pay less because they've not got as much money there as in a town, but we could pay more to make it, and it all evens out. Is this kind of roughly what you're saying? Would that work for you, Steve?
Again, depends on the artist, but potentially yes. And ironically, it's weird having this conversation right now, years later. That's how I first got started, as I mentioned earlier, with Pod, who was based in Ashton, who put me in contact with Tim, Paul Jackson, Stuart in Doncaster, and they presented a bunch of dates to me together on a particular act, and it worked. And I was managing bands then, and I actually drove the van to those shows, and I got to see the venues and meet them, and that whole thing with the right artist at the right time. I think it's a great idea.
So that'll kind of work, yeah. Would that work? I mean, it's obviously fraught with difficulties, isn't it? Because then you become like another in crowd that people can't get hold of, but working together is really important, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, John, you touched on it just now about the going direct to the artist one is a tricky one. We've only done it once or twice because 2 of the artists live around the corner. They're a worldwide touring band, but we're Welsh and everyone knows each other in Cardiff. You know, it's like so. We don't like doing it, but if you can give a chunk of money to the artist and do everything yourself, I mean, where do we stand there?
I know. Well, technically,
loyalty goes everywhere, doesn't it?
Technically, they're not really allowed to do that. But if you can't get hold of the agents, the agents not doing their job properly, are they? So it swings around about. I mean, obviously, because you're doing a good job. But if you heard somebody do that to one of your artists, would you read the riot act?
I would certainly have words with them about it. I think there's two ways on that. There's the type of scenario where the agent doesn't get back to the venue about an artist, and obviously you've got to have a etiquette discussion in your head about whether you make that direct contact or you don't, or you find another way through another promoter to do it. And there's a second one where the agent might not be convinced to do the show, but might not actually present the show or to management or the artist. And if the artists themselves want to do it and tell the agent they want to play a show, then that's a strong position to get a show. But there's a fine line about how you do that.
So I mean, obviously, it's better if you can communicate. Obviously, a lot of times, a lot of people get in touch, a lot of bands. It's a lot of work. You can't expect them to get back in touch straight away, can you? But if not getting back in touch at all, there's obviously a breakdown in communication. It's back to that word again, the communication word, isn't it? And
I think there's certain agents, certain venues aren't good communicators. Don't reply to people who aren't of interest to them at that moment, or aren't of interest full stop. And there's certain agents including myself, that sometimes try to get back to everybody as much as they can, but sometimes are too busy at that moment in time. And you're dealing with actually confirming dates, and the next thing would be to tell somebody they can't get a show or something, and that slips down the pecking order a bit. And apologise if that happens, but certainly best intentions to get back to people. But as I said, there are people who don't as well.
I mean, you're aware of this, aren't you? That's, if as an agent, people can be like bogged down with 10,000 emails a day. It's just that people just really don't feel like they want to get back in touch is a problem, isn't it?
Me, sorry.
Well, anybody down at the venue end.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the specific one that really plays on my mind and it's been troubling me for a long time is the fact that the agent had approached me originally about this particular band, and I won't name drop, but they started the conversation. It wasn't us that asked them, and then it was them that ended the conversation by just not getting back to us. So yeah, I understand they're busy. I'm busy. I don't always reply to things either. I try to, but again, sometimes they just sort of fall down the list and get forgotten about. But when they've approached us, I think it's just rude. It's bad manner that they just cut contact and. Yeah. So.
And I just want to go back to the thing you said before, Tim, about the idea when bands get to a certain level, you lose those bands. So just explore that for a couple of minutes. This idea of loyalty, that's they kind of use you to get to a certain level, and then you just can't. They just disappear.
Oh, well, once again, the guys on this panel aren't particularly guilty of that, but there are two or three agents who will ask you for favour shows, and then nothing ever happens after that. Or they'll ask you for a favour show and hold a date and then disappear into the mist. And like I say, my most recent example is Blossoms, and the agent I dealt with at 13 is really good. I deal with her a lot. But then when it came to them breaking, it's, I'm sorry, it's all gone to SJM. I don't like to break that news to you, but it's all gone to SJM. And I think, well, I've got access to 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 cap venues, and I could do that. And it's something that happens more and more and more. But one thing I would like to ask the guys over here is something that seems to have been creeping down from some practices that seem to have been creeping down from bigger shows recently in recent times. For example, my own particular bugbear is announce it on a Monday and put it on sale on a Friday. I totally get when you're talking about arena shows, you're completely building the hype. I get that. But at a small venue size, when you're trying to do 100, 150 tickets, you're losing impulse sales. Mm-hmm. You're losing. We live in a scroll world where people going down and down and down and looking at stuff. And I've said this before to other people. When Marks and Spencer's put a nice curry on the shelf on Wednesday and say, come back Monday, that's when I'll think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Announce it, sell the bloody tickets. To me, it's as simple as that.
I always say that as well. It's totally true. People don't, you look on the internet, it's that moment, and it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely on your side on that one. 100%.
Well, who is making those decisions?
It depends on the band, I think. Oftentimes it's the label or driven by management, but I do actually think that the responsibility is with the agent to sort of question why they want to do that, because quite often when I've asked that question, there's no good answer, because that's what's done.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. What you said earlier about having the wherewithal to go on sale when you like that, I do object to, because oftentimes I'm spending a lot of time monitoring the artwork, getting all the artwork in, making sure that I've got all the assets in place, making sure that I have to sit on the PR person to get the press release done, to get the label to coordinate from their side and all the rest of it. So I need a coordinated announcement on sale so that I've got everything going up at the same time so that the band can announce everything, because they're not going to announce every individual show straight off the bat. They'll announce the tour. So that, is why we do it that way. The staggered on sale, unless it's the hottest thing ever, mm-hmm. and there's a damn good reason, a fan club pre-sale, or, I work with Amanda Palmer, so her label, Patreon, part of their deal for signing up to that is that they get 48 hours in which to buy tickets prior to general public.
Do I have an issue
that
with pre-sales?
I have no issue with. Yep. But just going on sale 2 days later because you think it builds hype, I'm totally with you. I think it's a load of bollocks.
Is this again go back to this idea that the people in the venues know their market better than the people, booking the shows in a sense. Obviously you trust the local promoters you're working with, but some people don't seem to trust them, do they? They don't seem to understand that someone in York knows how to sell tickets in York far better than someone in London does.
I do think there is a lot of communication breakdown, between agents and venues, clearly, between agents and promoters. But also I think there's a lot of myth about what the agent's role actually is. And I think that is partly down to us to educate people as well, because we do a hell of a lot more than sit there with a notepad and paper and a diary and just sort of fill it in and go, well, that's 500 quid less, so we'll just scratch that and rub them out of the
So what would you define the agent's role as?
I think our job is to look after the promoters as much as it is to look after the artists. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be more bands, more clients, more artists. But if we keep going on at the rate that we're going, there's not going to be more venues.
So it's a really interesting point you got there, what you're saying. Your job is to look after the promoters as much as the artists.
I think
yeah.
so.
This is how it should be in an ideal kind of world, isn't it?
You can't bite the hand that feeds.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Steve? It's not just.
No, I think
it's not like you're firstly protecting the artists. You know, you're just taking as much money as you can and sod the promoters.
I think artists is obviously, without the artists there are no shows. So my artists are most really important for me. But equally, you know, certainly, last thing I want is promoters not to be here. So ultimately, I think it's a two-way relationship to protect the artist and to try and do as a fair a deal as that promoters are still there in the future, but knowing that the artists have costs as well.
Okay, we'll run out of time now. So if there's anything else to pick up, people, you'll be around, won't you, for a little bit? Yeah. So you can find them in the bar or wandering about. So thanks to the panel anyway.